And good morning.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I am doing good. It's been a busy week for both of us, I think.
Yes, very busy.
We had Dynamics Con, which, although it is a virtual conference, by the end of the week, I was kind of tired.
Yeah, I was too. And how awesome was that conference? Just to kind of throw that out there, it was
Yep.
executed so well, and all the sessions that I attended, I learned so much. And there's so many more sessions that I need to go back and catch up on because I missed as well.
Yes, hats off to John and Molly and to everyone behind the scenes who helped produce that. And I know there's an entire team, literally an entire team, building the website, doing the Twitter, the recordings, the scheduling. So, fantastic conference. Second one, it was a lot of fun. The comments during the sessions, I think, are actually some of the best part. Unfortunately, I don't think those get recorded, or maybe fortunately, but no, it was great, great. So thank you for joining me this morning at the end of a busy week. And I we had talked based on something that you had tweeted. So let me just see if I can figure out the buttons to do that here. So here we go. So this was late February. You found an interesting, shall we say, design feature of Business Central. And why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, definitely. So recently had an implementation, client went live and they came to me with this question. And what it is within the vendor window itself, the vendor list, you have the statistics and you can see the balance due, the payments, all of those in there. And what was interesting is this client had voided a check. So you would think that the payment dollar amount would remove that payment out of there because they reissue it, but in fact what was happening is the void was not being removed out of there. So did some testing myself, opened up a case with Microsoft, got the answer that it's working as designed,
Yep.
it's a great suggestion, go ahead and put it on the
Yep.
ideas page. So I was just kind of really blown away because my background is a user. As a user, I would never think that this would happen, right? So trying to explain to your client that Microsoft actually built it this way,
Yep.
it's a hard conversation first off, but it's kind of disheartening as well as for being a consultant and having to actually have that conversation because I think that should just be standard functionality, right? That's what I would expect that payment to be. So that's really the background on it.
Got it. And so after you posted this, I looked at it and I thought, yeah, and we both come from the Dynamics GP world, and for both of us, at least in the U.S. market, and now we have to consider that Business Central is a very international product based on Nav. It's been around forever, so this is a little surprising, and so it was puzzling for me too. I thought, well, why is it? Maybe there's some obscure business compliance reason for this. I don't know what the background story was, but I also think a possible justification is as a developer, I regularly see cases where something is developed and not all of the business process scenarios are considered, right? So, oh, I need to show vendor payments in this fact box next to the vendor. How hard can that be, right? And so now there was a second component of this, like, well, how hard can it be to fix this, right? If this is just filtering out voided payments, I thought, well, come on, you just filter out voided payments. Well, coming from the Dynamics GP world, I think you and I would say, well, that's pretty easy. You just look for the voided flag and you exclude the voided flag, right? Well, I will show you it's a little more nuanced than that. Not a whole lot, but it isn't as simple in Business Central given how the journals are saved. But we'll take a look at that. So, with that, I thought I would give this a try, right? Because I'm trying to learn Business Central development. This is an interesting challenge. I thought, one field, how hard can it be to change one field? And it started an adventure. And Jeremy actually posts a comment. There is a bit of history of forgetting about reversed and voided business cases. And he uses the term forgetting about. So I don't know if it's, the developers didn't think about it, or if there might be some obscure kind of technical pseudo business reason for this. But let's take a look at this, and let me find what screen I'm on. Okay. So we are in Business Central here, and this is my Business Central Docker container. And let me try to make this a bit bigger for the folks at home. Okay, so I have set up a brand new vendor, Shmeev Shmendo, no relation whatsoever. And we need to enter let's start with an invoice on this brand new vendor so that we get a balance that we need to pay. So as a developer, I am clueless on the product functionality. So why don't you walk me through the very basic process of creating a vendor invoice transaction?
All right. Well, first, let me have you scroll down a little bit just to make sure that we have the posting groups in there, because that's something that is required first off, right?
Thank you.
So if we didn't have those in there, then we're not going to be able to post that invoice. So we do have those in there.
Okay.
So Steve, since you're on the vendor card, there's multiple ways to start an invoice, but since you're here, let's just go ahead and click on New Document up there on the menu.
Okay, New Document, and I'll switch to full screen here. Okay, so I have New Document. Excellent. I'm feeling confident. Okay. Okay, let's go with the very unique number of 1,000. Okay. Okay. And is there a quick way for me to find expense accounts? Or do I just need to? Okay. How about we do repairs and maintenance? How does that sound? Okay, excellent. Okay, how about $1,500 and no tax on this. Okay, that's good, because I was testing with items last night, which wasn't very good. I was getting item or tax. So, okay, so I have the direct unit cost. Anything else I need to enter? No. Okay. Post. And I would like to post the invoice. Now, this is a question I have. It says, do you want to open the posted invoice? Do people commonly want this?
No, I actually turn this notification off for almost all users.
That's good to know. I'm just like, why is this constantly showing up? Like it from a GP world, it seems odd. So, okay, so I'm going to say no, I do not want to open the posted invoice. And now, if we look at our very handsome vendor statistics here, we see that we have an outstanding balance of $1,500. So, great. Let's issue a payment for this vendor.
Okay, so the easiest way to go about this is let's just go to the home page, your Business Central homepage.
Okay. Got it.
Go ahead and click on Chronos there.
Okay.
And from here, we have these blue Qs down here kind of cut off. So if you scroll down a little bit, what we're going to see here is down in that payment section, we're going to see outstanding vendor invoices of 14. So these are going to be invoices entered into the system, but not yet paid, right? So I like to train people to come here because they can see the vendors, they can see the invoice numbers, the dollar amounts, and they can actually select what they want to pay. So in our case, we are paying Schmeev, Schmin. That is just great. So you have it selected because it's highlighted.
Okay.
So we don't need to do anything special there. But from here, you're going to click on process at the top. And then you're going to click on create payment. What this is going to do is it's actually going to transfer that transaction onto your payment journal. So we need to make sure that the payment journal exists. So under batch name where it says cash, go ahead and click on the ellipsis there. So it does exist. However, it's got a balance type of GL account, so let's not use that one. Let's use the bottom one just because it's got the bank account on there. It makes it a little bit quicker.
And this was likely one mistake that I repeated several times last night trying to test this, and I couldn't find where this thing went and how to avoid it. So that was probably a mistake. Okay, so that should be fine. Okay, so there we go.
Okay, so you can populate bank account here as well as checking, and then payment type you can put as a computer check.
Okay. Because in the United States, we are big fans of computer checks.
We definitely are.
Okay, so we have a payment journal here, and it is for my vendor, Shmeev Shmendo, and it is a bank payment hitting the checking account. Now, interestingly, $14.70. I noticed this oddity last night. Do you know why it's not paying all $1,500? And we don't need to solve this, but I noticed it would leave this $30 balance on my vendor.
Yeah, there's probably something specific set up maybe with that payment term, but it should bring it across. Or you don't have a credit memo in there.
Okay, so it could be a discount that's occurring, a 2% discount.
That's actually probably what it is. It's probably a discount on your payment terms because you're paying it right away.
Right. Okay, we'll just leave it then. And so we're going to have a check for $14.70. Okay, got it. Now what?
Yep. So from here, you're going to click on check at the top.
Okay.
And then you're going to say print check.
Print check.
Yep. So when I'm testing, I go straight to print check. I don't do like a preview or anything.
Okay.
So here you're going to say bank account checking. Now, for those developers who've never done this before, once you have checking in there and you come back in this window, it'll remember it for you.
Okay. Good.
So some of this stuff is just going to be there next time. So in order to get the system to actually register that the check was printed, you have to click print. If you click preview, it doesn't actually register. So
I could buy that.
Go ahead and click print.
Yep.
And here we should see your discount as well. So there's your $30 discount.
There we go. Confirming. Excellent. Okay. Yeah. So now I've printed to the screen essentially. Is that sufficient to trigger the print mechanism?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So I can cancel this, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So now if you even scroll to the right, we're going to see the check printed box is now going to be checked.
Okay, excellent. Check printed. Fancy. Perfect. Okay, so now if I go back to my vendor, I should be able to see that we issued a payment to this vendor, right?
Not yet, because we haven't posted it.
There's a posting. Okay, I will stop. Okay, now what?
So we're going to go back into that journal. So now you're going to go to cash management.
Cash management. Wow. Okay.
And then payment journals.
Payment journals.
And let's go ahead and open that payment one, payment reconciliation.
Okay.
Yep. So now, from here.
When I closed this window and I went out, could I have just posted it from that point?
Yes.
Okay, so that was my fault for leaving the window. Okay, got it.
Yeah, but it was a good check because it's good to know that even though you've printed the check, it's not actually populating that field that the payment has been made, right? It would be an interesting test if you were doing an ACH payment because at the time you go to bank and export that remittance to the vendor, it's marking that, that it's been exported. So I almost wonder, and maybe if we have time,
We'll do a second
Another
test.
time we can test that, because that would be an interesting test too, to know what triggers it on that side.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I now have this payment journal. Can I post it?
Yes, you may.
Okay, and no need to post in print.
Not unless you need backup.
Okay, nope, I hate backup. This is a live stream. We have no backup. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm going to post the journal lines. Journal lines were successfully posted. And am I done here now?
Yes.
Okay, looks like it, because this is just a blank line now. Okay, excellent. Okay, so now if I go back to my vendor, we should see, ta-da, we see $1,470 payment because we issued a check for this vendor. So now we need to move on to voiding the payment. What is the best way to do that?
The best way I found is to go up to your lookup and type in check ledger entries, not to be confused with like bank ledger entries, right?
Which
So,
is where I spent half an hour last night going in circles. Yep.
yeah, you should have just called me. I tell people don't spin your wheels. I'm trying to find
I
something.
texted Tanya. I'm like, how do I void a check? How is this so hard? And she's like, duh, you just go to check ledger entries. I'm like, wait, I looked at 50 blog posts and they failed to mention this little detail.
You didn't look at my blog post on that, because I actually have a blog on how to do this.
See, that's my number one mistake. Okay,
Yep.
so here I have my check ledger entries, and I see this is essentially a ledger entry. It's a check, as far as I could tell.
Right. Right.
Okay, so,
So,
oh, I can just do process void?
correct.
Okay, void check. Should I
Now,
unapply and,
yeah, we want to unapply it so that that invoice shows up open again for us instead of
okay,
just voiding the check.
okay. And the date doesn't really matter in this case.
In our case, no, but
Okay, got it.
you should watch dates if you're a user.
Right, yep.
Yep.
Fiscal periods, come on, that doesn't matter. Okay, so yes, I'm going to void. Now, I didn't see anything.
So over in your entry status, it does say
Look at that.
financially voided now.
Yep, yep. Okay, so we have a financially voided check. Very cool. So now can I go back and check the vendor?
Yeah.
Okay, the moment of truth. I'm just going to press F5 just to make sure. Press an F5, and what do you know? We still see the payment balance in there. And if I click there, detailed vendor ledger entries, and initial payment entry 1470. So kind of crazy. So right now we have demonstrated the issue, right? We voided the payment. It still shows the payment has been paid to the vendor. Okay. So now so I think this is the clue to what we're about to see, right? So I'm going to uncheck payment on this filter. And we will see something interesting here. And this starts to expose what's going on behind the scenes, right? We see a payment for 1470. We see a negative entry for 1470. But that fact box is only showing the initial entry payment. And if I do this, like, well, I want this negative included too. But in Business Central, unlike GP, it's not a voided flag on the initial entry payment. It's a second negative entry to zero out that payment. And I don't know the lingo, but that's what I found. And we'll take a look at that to look more, research this. So,
Okay. Well, one
I,
thing that I found
yep,
interesting, Steve, about this, because I didn't go this far into testing, right? But I see the negative 1470 there on that top line. If you look at the document type, it's blank. So it's making me think here, is Microsoft utilizing that field to query on for those payment amounts? And it's as simple as them fixing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so and we'll look at the actual data in the table and see which record would apply and what it's going to take to try to include that in the fact box statistics. And that's where I see how all the pieces are coming together, and we're going to create a little bit of a kind of a duct tape prototype to show how this could be done. But the quirk around this record, I think, is where things start to get subtle, right? It's not so easy to say, hey, include that entry. It's like, well, what is that? It's an initial entry with no document type. One moment, let me turn off the telephono here. How do we include that properly without like causing all sorts of weird problems when all these other weird transactions may be included in here? And so lots of comments coming in. Sorry, I'm just kind of holding off on them for now. Let's see. Yeah, so Jeremy's speculating that this might be a North American oriented thing because of the check printing. And it could be that with the ACH, we see slightly different results. And so that would be an interesting test. Jeremy's wondering if it's a North American localization issue. So lots of questions here. Okay.
Yeah, and one question that I brought up, I think, via email to you the other day, Steve, is, we're seeing this issue with vendors. Is this happening on customers' payment side as well? Is this happening in the inventory module with any of the queries that are going on there with like voiding or adjustments? I mean, it just kind of it raises this interest of,
how reliable are these numbers for North American customers at least, right?
Right.
Okay, so here's what I did once I saw your question. I said, okay, well, what's going on here? This is kind of the thought process I went through. So, people let me know that when I switch to full screen without us in the corner, we lose your audio. So I'm just going to we're going to have to cope with this picture in picture for now, and I'll resize things so we don't lose your audio. I don't know how to fix that quite yet. I must have missed a setting in the 7,000 settings going on here. So I'm just going to resize this so that everyone can see it. And so the first thing I did was said, okay, well, we see vendor statistics here. And my question is, where does this information come from? And to do that, I press Alt F1. Oops, not Alt F1. What is it? Control Alt F1?
Yep.
Okay, Control Alt F1 to open page inspection. And when I do that, it's too small.
I think your fact box.
There we go.
Closed.
Okay, fact box closed. So let me, okay, too much going on. So then I'm going to scroll here. I'm just going to click on the fact box, and then page inspection is going to show me where that's coming from. And I thought, oh, okay, it's something called a vendor statistics fact box page. And that's really not a full page. It's just a card part, it says. And interestingly, it is pulling its information directly from the vendor table. And I thought, okay, it's a little different than how I would do it and look for it in the GP world, but BC does things differently. So we said, okay, vendor, okay. Now I can filter it, and I want to look for payments. And I see two payments fields. One is 0 and the other is our 1470. So we care about a field called payments LCY. And I'm assuming that's like local currency is what that means. So payments LCY is where this 1470 is coming from. Okay, so if I click on view table, I can actually go to the vendor table and I can scroll over. And this gets tricky, and it's probably near the end. Okay, let me see if I can search for it. Payments. No. Oh, there we go. There's payments. And we see 1470, but we want payments LCY. There's payments $. There we go. I think this is just the label of payments $, and there's our 1470. So I thought, okay, so it's in the vendor table. Interesting. So it's maintaining that calculated amount in the vendor table. And knowing how BC works behind the scenes, I knew that, okay, they're not actually storing this calculated number. It's probably what they call a flow field. It's calculated on the fly. So I said, okay, let's jump into Visual Studio. And here is where you are going to become a novice developer just like me. So I'm going to open Visual Studio Code, and we're going to press F1, the magic F1 button. And I can just, with one click AL Go. And this creates a brand new project for me to do an AL customization. And I'm going to call this Vendor Statistics is the name of my project. I'm going to target 2020 Wave 2. And I am using my own server for this. And it is called Dev17. And it is a BC instance. I'm just going to do a little cleanup here so that it doesn't try to open a page automatically. Okay, so that quickly, I now have an AL development project ready to get started. It took seconds. It was an F1, a couple cleanup. Now, I don't need Hello World, so I'm just going to delete that. Okay, so now I'm going to refer to my notes here because I can't do this on the fly yet. So first, we want to, let me do a new table, and we'll take a look at what's going on in there. I'm doing it slightly out of order because I don't remember the best way. And let me call this, it's a little nervous in a live stream, vendor table extension AL.
Perfect.
And I'm going to use a snippet, which is just a shortcut that automatically writes code for me. I'm on Team Waldo on this one, in that I don't know what I'm doing yet, so I need to rely on snippets. So I'm going to say actually, let me download symbols. Symbols are what allows it to understand what it's coding against in Business Central. It's like debugging code. Okay, so now let's see if this works. T table extension Waldo. And it says, oh, great, I see you want to create a table extension. And I'm going to have it automatically give me a table number. It's just an internal ID that BC needs. And I'm going to call this, what did I call it here? Vendor table extension. Extends, come on, vendor, that's the table. Okay, now I don't know what I need to do here to get the correct information. So one neat thing about BC is I can click on here, I can just press F12. It takes me to the actual source code for the Business Central table, which is kind of cool. So now I can go in here and I can scroll down and say, well, let me search for, what was that? It's payments. So I want to search for payments, and I don't want the regular payments. I want the payments LCY. And look at that. So this tells us how Business Central is querying the data to calculate that payment amount. And if we scroll over here, think of this like a SQL statement. This is sum the amount of the vendor ledger entries where the initial document type is payment.
Yeah.
The entry type is initial entry, just like what we saw on that list page, right, of the ledger entries. And then you need to filter based on vendor number, global dimension, posting date, and currency code. So I speculated it as one of these two things. And so I said, okay, well, what if I create a new field? So I'm just going to cheat, and I'm going to grab this field that I already did. I'm going to add this in my vendor page extension. And I apologize. I am In case you don't know, I'm not an expert on this yet. Okay, so I have created my own field called net payments. So instead of payments LCY, actually I think it was David Singleton who suggested, well, call it something like net payments so there's a clear differentiation. We don't want to replace payments and cause confusion and override or hide the BC field. Let's make ours distinct and call it net payments. So I'm going to create a similar payment amount calculated field, but we have a couple choices here, and this is what I don't know. Well, we could hide initial document type of payment. The concern I have there is, well, there could be 20 different ledger or entries that are coming in, and we might pick those up. Payments, invoices, who knows what. So I'm thinking we may want to filter based on this. And keep that filter. But the one thing I saw is that initial entry, I could be wrong here, and I may have just gotten lucky. How do we see that list of the ledgers? Payment journal?
Vendor ledger is where I would go for that.
Okay, vendor ledger entries.
Yep. And then you're going to filter by that vendor name or number.
Oh, let me do vendor number because it's got to drop down. Vendor number. Okay. So there's our payment. Now, interesting. Look at that. Voiding check 200. Okay. So yeah, document type is blank. Now, this happened to work for me. So let's try this. We can try both ways, but my concern is that document type of blank could be a whole lot of things. Like, I have no idea what's going to get dumped in this table. If it voids a check and has a blank document type, what else is going to have a blank document type? And so this is where the challenge is. I don't know how to filter this list to give us what we want, but let's give it a try. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking if you can go into a journal and you can enter something into the subledger and you don't have to have document type in there. So you're right. If someone's not aware of what they're doing, there could be some blanks along the way.
Yep, not aware of what I'm doing. So let's give this a try. So let's first remove initial document type of payment, and I'll keep initial entry, see what happens. From what I saw, I think initial entry was not present. I could be wrong. So now I have this table extension, meaning I've created a new field that has a different calculation for what we're calling net payment. So now I'm going to create a new page extension. So let's call this vendor page extension AL and T page extension Waldo and some number. And this is vendor card, I think it is. Let me just refer to my cheat sheet here. Oh no, we need to modify the vendor statistics fact box. Got it. So vendor stats EX, I need to have that in quotes. And this extends vendor statistics fact box, because that's that little box. That's all we need to modify, is we need to extend that little box to add our new field. And I'm just going to copy and paste this. All we're saying is I want to add a new field after the payments LCY field, and we're going to add our new field called net payments LCY, application area all, meaning just show up everywhere. Is that it? Okay, and I don't need this action thing. So it is a little cryptic, but it's just a few lines to actually add this. So now I'm going to save this and flip a dime as to whether this is going to work. And I'm going to press Control F5, which compiles this, publishes to my Business Central Docker container, and auto-magically installs it so that I have this extension ready to go. So now let me just close my other pages. I'm going to go to Purchasing, Vendors, and Let me resize this. And let's go to our vendor. And if I scroll down, okay, so we show net payments negative 1,500. So that particular version where we remove, what was it? We removed initial document type payments. Something's not right there. And so I'm just going to comment it out. And this is what happened to work for me through a lucky guess. So I'm just going to make that change. Control F5 again. And I'm going to go back to purchasing, vendors, vendor, and scroll down. And there we go. We have a net payment of $0 now. Now, I was able to kind of get it to work. And so this is kind of the process I went through saying, it's not that hard to fix, like technically to get a new field in there, but I do not know the proper flow field syntax here. I don't know what we need to filter. So I was able to kind of prototype it, but we need some help from a person who really understands what entries are going in and out of that those vendor ledgers to see, okay, how do we properly filter this? Because it is not as simple as just filtering out voided equals 1. So that was the concept. And let's see, we have a few comments. Eric Hugard, welcome, Eric. The challenge with messing with flow fields like you're doing is this could very well be outside the underlying sum field and then be very performance heavy. Okay, and so interesting point. We could have performance implications here. So we're doing what's called a table extension, which can have a performance impact, and then we're messing with flow fields, which can have a performance impact. Now, you could test this and see and potentially measure what the performance impact is, and we'd have to see, okay, well, if it's only the fact box, does that minimize the performance impact? And so, yeah, lots of implications here. So obviously the best answer is we could say, okay, Microsoft, here is what we think is a better solution. Submit that in the ideas entry and say, please fix it. And we rally our troops and get 150 votes for this suggestion. And the European people are probably like, who needs that? Who issues checks, right? But hopefully we can rally the US troops to say, please upvote this and make this happen. But it is technically possible. And so what we can do is, get some assistance for people with more BC nav experience and see, is there a way that this might be a viable extension that we could produce and offer to the community? And let's see. Okay, so Eric is saying, look at what fields are included in the definition of the sum field. Okay, and Jeremy says that requires no flow field. Okay. So maybe you could also fix via a code unit subscription on void check to change the type to payment. Then all fact boxes would be right. So Jeremy's saying, well, we see that the, what was that? Vendor ledger?
Yep.
So I think he's suggesting we see that, come on, vendor number, and we see that document type is missing. Could you just plug in document type payment here? Because then it would be picked up and it would automatically use the Business Central field. I'm going to guess there are some implications to that, right? So anyway, so I don't know the answer, and lots of suggestions coming in the live chat, but unfortunately I don't have the knowledge to do them on the fly. So Eric is pointing out sum field is a thing that flow field works on to make them super fast, and that is based on which fields are included in the definition of the sum field. So that's a homework assignment for me. But I think what we wanted to achieve today is trying to explain the issue, kind of look at what's behind this, well, explain the issue, demonstrate how to reproduce the issue, take a look at what's behind the scenes for that one seemingly simple field, right? And it turns out there's a little bit going on there, and it's not quite as simple to fix as we might think at first glance. So anyway, any questions or thoughts?
No, I mean this was good to go through and see the back end. So thank you, Steve, for taking the time to prep for that. I do hope that someone in the community comes up with a good fix for it, or that Microsoft fixes it, because it is an issue. I will look at, on my end, I'll do a little homework too and do a test for an ACH payment just to see if it has the same effect, because I am curious about that now that we're sitting here talking about it.
Yep.
So I'll report back on that as well.
Okay. And Jeremy is saying that he believes it is safe to update the initial document type to payment. He says he's worked with payroll checks and wrote code to avoid them, and payment as doc type is the correct field value. So it would be interesting if you do this with ACH and you don't get the same results. It would be interesting to go into the ledger entries, if I can, and see if the document type is populated for avoided ACH. And it could be that this is the bug. This is essentially a bug, not of the payment LCY calculation in the fact box, but it's a bug in the void process that they're not populating this field properly. That's an entirely different twist.
Right.
Very interesting.
I mean, we could spend so much time testing this.
Hours and hours in our free time.
I know. I'm kind of excited to test it. I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking, okay, Steve, let's get ACH set up for this vendor and let's try it,
And Jeremy is saying anytime you reverse a transaction, the doc type should match so that the sums work. So that would be very interesting. Rather than having to create a new field and do a new calculation, if we find that a void of a check is simply not populating that document type, then that could be a different interpretation and say, okay, the problem is not with the payment in the fact box. The problem is you do have a bug that these are not being properly voided. Thank you so much to everyone in the comments who make the live stream more productive. Very cool. Okay, so hey, I'm happy with this, and we can, after we're done, I'm happy to chat and do more testing if you want.
Awesome.
Okay, well, very cool. Well, thank you for going on this journey. It was really neat, and thanks for hopping on a live stream. And we're testing this new Skype feed on my live stream. It seems to be much better, so thanks for being the guinea pig for that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, well, cool. Well, thank you very much for joining me on a Friday morning. And hey, have a great day and get some rest and don't test too much.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good one.